If I told you that a family earning two middle-class salaries is actually 3 times more likely to go bankrupt than a family earning just one, you would probably tell me to check my calculator. It feels intuitively wrong. Two paychecks should mean double the safety, double the savings, and half the risk. But the data says the exact opposite. We have spent the last 40 years building an economy where the two-income household isn't a luxury, it is a mandatory survival tactic. And yet, these families are financially more fragile than the single-earner households of the 1950s. Today, I'm going to show you why doubling your income might actually be doubling your risk of financial ruin, and exactly how to escape the trap. Let's strip away the nostalgia and look at the raw mechanics of a 1950s household versus a modern one. In the standard mid-century model, you had one breadwinner and one stay-at-home parent. That single paycheck was modest, but the fixed costs, the mortgage, the single car, the groceries, were well below that income line. That gap was the safety margin. But more importantly, that non-working spouse was a walking, talking insurance policy. If the breadwinner got sick or lost a job, the other partner could step into the workforce to bridge the gap. They were a backup generator sitting in the garage, ready to fire up. Fast forward to today. We have two earners bringing in significantly more money. But we have also constructed a lifestyle that requires both of those engines to be running at 100% capacity just to stay airborne. This isn't just about inflation or the price of eggs. This is about structural fragility. Over the next 30 minutes, I am going to break down the specific math behind the two-income trap, a concept popularized by Elizabeth Warren and Amelia Warren Tyagi. We are going to look at why your fixed costs are the real enemy, and I will give you a specific protocol to insulate your family from this risk without needing a time machine. If you want to understand the mechanics of your money rather than just guessing, subscribing to the channel is the best ROI on your time this week. Let's get into the numbers. Here is the common belief. Modern families are struggling because wages have stagnated. While that is true in some sectors, when you look at household data, the typical two-income family today actually brings in about 75% more inflation-adjusted revenue than the one-income family of a generation ago. On paper, we are rich. We have flat-screen TVs, smartphones, and 2 cars in the driveway. So, where is the money going? The assumption is that we are wasting it on lattes and avocados. But if you actually audit the bank statements of the middle class, consumption on clothing, food, and appliances has actually gone down relative to income. We are spending less on the fun stuff, earning 75% more total money, and yet we are ending the month with less cash in the bank than our grandparents did. This is the setup for the trap. Let's look at the hard numbers. Research indicates that while household income rose by roughly 76% between the early 70s and the early 2000s, fixed expenses for the typical family rose by 143%. That is the killer stat. We took that second paycheck and immediately committed it to non-negotiable monthly bills. We bought houses in good school districts, which meant significantly higher mortgages. We added a second car because both parents need to commute. And the big one, childcare. In the 1950s, childcare cost $0 because mum was home. Today, it is effectively a second mortgage. When you subtract taxes, the cost of the second car, the cost of childcare, and the premium paid for housing, the discretionary income for a modern two-earner family is actually lower than the single-earner family of the past. The buffer didn't just shrink. For many, it vanished. The psychological twist here is that this spending doesn't feel like luxury. It feels like survival. You aren't buying a Ferrari. You are buying a safe neighbourhood with a decent elementary school. You aren't hiring a private chef. You are paying for daycare so you can go to work to pay for the daycare. This creates a rigid cost structure. In business terms, we have moved from high variable costs, which you can cut in a recession, to high fixed costs, which you have to pay no matter what. If a 1950s family hit hard times, they could stop buying new clothes or switch to cheaper food. They could cut back. But today, you cannot cut your mortgage payment. You cannot cut your student loan payment. You cannot cut the childcare bill if you want to keep your job. We have locked ourselves into a high burn rate business model. So, what is the protocol here? It starts with a radical redefining of affordability. Most mortgage lenders will look at your gross dual income and approve you for a loan that eats up 35 to 40% of that combined number. If you sign that paper, you are stepping into the trap. The goal is to separate your lifestyle costs from your total income. The golden rule for dual income households should be to attempt, as closely as possible, to keep fixed expenses, housing, utilities, cars, within the limits of one salary. I know, that sounds impossible in today's housing market. But even getting close to that ratio changes the game. It means the second salary becomes pure wealth-building fuel, savings, investments, debt destruction, rather than just keeping the lights on. It converts that second paycheck from a shackle into a surplus. Now, you might be thinking, Tom, we have good jobs. We'll never go bankrupt. But here is the terrifying part. Having children is the single best predictor that a woman will file for bankruptcy. Not divorce, not gambling, not bad stock picks, kids. The very thing you are working so hard to provide for is the statistical marker for financial collapse. Why? Because kids destroy your flexibility. You can't move to a studio apartment to save money. You can't cancel health insurance. And when you look at why this happens, it leads us to the most dangerous missing asset in the modern portfolio: the ghost of the 1950s housewife. Let's talk about that ghost. I mentioned earlier that the stay-at-home spouse was an insurance policy. Economists call this a latent earner. In a crisis, they could deploy labour. If Dad broke his leg, Mum could get a job at the factory or the diner. It wasn't ideal, but it was a lever they could pull to save the family. In a modern dual-income home, that lever is already broken off. Both adults are already working 40, 50 or 60 hours a week. There are no more hours to sell. There is no one on the bench waiting to play. If one person loses a job, you can't just work harder because you are already maxed out. You have zero surge capacity. This is why shocks that used to be manageable, a sick parent, a temporary layoff, a broken transmission, now push families over the edge. When you have a stay-at-home parent, you also have a massive amount of unpaid labour being generated: cooking, cleaning, childcare, elder care. When both parents work, that labour doesn't disappear. It has to be outsourced, and usually at a premium. We pay for daycare. We pay for takeout because we are too tired to cook. We pay for dry cleaning. We pay for summer camps. This is the monetisation of the household. You are earning more money, yes, but you are also paying for services you used to get for free internally. The net mathematical gain is often much smaller than the gross salary suggests. If one partner earns $50,000, but the cost of replacing their domestic labour and paying taxes on their income is $40,000, you are adding a massive amount of stress and complexity to your life for a net gain of $10,000. That is a terrible trade, yet millions of us make it automatically. The danger comes from the assumption of permanence. We build our budgets assuming that both partners will be healthy, employed, and capable of working full-time for 30 straight years without interruption. That is a statistical absurdity. People get sick, companies downsize, parents need care. In the old single income model, a job loss was a crisis of income, but the home front was stable. In the two-income model, a job loss is a crisis of income and a crisis of logistics. If you pull the child out of daycare to save money, you lose your spot. If you keep them in, you are burning cash you don't have. You are trapped between a rock and a hard place because your entire life infrastructure is built on the assumption of two perfect paychecks arriving every 2 weeks forever. So how do we fix this without forcing one person to quit their job? You have to artificially recreate the safety margin. If you are a two-income household, your emergency fund cannot be the standard 3 to 6 months of expenses. That advice is outdated. Because your fixed costs are so high and your flexibility is so low, you need a liquidity buffer closer to 9 or 12 months. This cash pile acts as the synthetic stay-at-home spouse. It is the backup generator. When you lose an income, this capital steps in to pay the mortgage and the daycare, so you don't have to disrupt the entire family infrastructure. You have to treat your savings not as a way to buy things later, but as a way to buy stability now. If you don't have this liquid margin, you are driving a race car with no brakes. Speaking of race cars, there is one specific purchase that drives this entire problem. It is the single biggest reason middle-class families bid themselves into bankruptcy. It isn't cars, and it isn't vacations. It is the house in the right school district. We have convinced ourselves that if we don't buy into the absolute best zip code, we are failing our children. So we take that second income and we pour it into real estate. But here is the catch. Once you buy that house, you can't just sell it when things get tight. You are geographically leveraged. Elizabeth Warren calls this the bidding war. In the past, a nice house was just a nice house. Today, a house is a bundled commodity. It is shelter plus an education ticket. Because it is illegal to charge tuition for public schools, we charge it through the housing market. Parents, terrified of their kids falling behind in a competitive economy, bid up the price of homes in good districts. Since everyone else has two incomes now, you must have two incomes just to win the bid. It's an arms race. If everyone stands up at a concert, nobody sees any better. But everyone has to stand just to see it all. We are all working twice as hard to buy the same square footage our parents bought on one income, just because it is attached to a specific elementary school. The math on this is brutal. When you overpay for a house in a prime district, you aren't just taking on a larger mortgage, you are taking on higher property taxes, higher insurance, and higher maintenance costs. These scale linearly with the home value. If you stretch your budget to the absolute limit to get that $600,000 mortgage because of the school rating, you have effectively turned your child's education into a massive, non-dischargeable debt obligation. And unlike private school tuition, which you can cancel if you lose your job by moving them to public school, you cannot cancel your mortgage without losing your home and ruining your credit. You have tied your short-term financial survival to a 30-year liability. The irony is that the stress of this financial tightrope often does more damage to the family dynamic than a slightly lower-rated school district would. This is driven by fear. Pure and simple. The fear that if your kid doesn't go to the school with the best test scores, they won't get into the good college and they won't get the good job. It is status anxiety weaponized against your bank account. Marketing teams and real estate agents know this. They whisper about resale value and community, but what they are really selling is parental guilt relief. We tell ourselves we are doing it for the kids, but by putting the family in a position where one missed paycheck means foreclosure, we are actually exposing the kids to maximum risk. Stability is a far more valuable gift to a child than a slightly newer computer lab. The solution here is the hardest one to swallow because it requires going against the herd. You have to question the premise of the school district premium. Run the numbers on alternatives. Would it be cheaper to live in a much more affordable neighborhood with a smaller mortgage and pay for private school? Often, surprisingly, the answer is yes. Or, even more radically, would it be better to live in a good enough district and use the saved money to provide tutors, travel, and a stress-free home environment? You have to decouple your housing choice from your ego. If buying the best house requires 2 incomes to sustain, you can't afford it. Period. You are buying a liability, not an asset. Downgrading your zip code to upgrade your peace of mind is the smartest trade you can make. There is one more layer to this trap that nobody talks about. We assume that 2 earners means diversification. If one job fails, you have the other. But what if I told you that in many cases, 2 incomes actually double your exposure to failure? It's like having an airplane with 2 engines, but designing the plane so heavy that it crashes if even one engine fails. In that scenario, adding a second engine doesn't make you safer. It just doubles the number of parts that can break and kill you. Here is the logic. If your family budget requires $8,000 a month to function, and you need both salaries to hit that number, you are now betting on 2 independent variables. You need mum to keep her job, and you need dad to keep his job. If the probability of one person losing their job is 5%, the probability of either of you losing a job is roughly double that. You have doubled the surface area for bad luck to strike. And because recessions tend to be correlated, meaning industries often crash together, the protection you think you have is an illusion. A single earner family only has one job to worry about protecting. A dual earner family living at the limit has to win 2 coin flips every single month just to stay solvent. When that bad luck hits, a layoff, a medical bill, families don't just cut back. They can't, because of those fixed costs we talked about. So they turn to debt. This is where the credit card and the home equity line of credit, HELOC, come in. Warren's research showed that the rise in bankruptcy wasn't due to reckless spending, but families using credit to fill the gap between their rising fixed costs and their temporary income drops. They used the house like an ATM to pay the mortgage on the house. It's a death spiral. In the 1950s, if you ran out of money, you ran out of money. Today, lenders will happily let you dig the hole deeper for years until the collapse is total. The availability of easy credit masks the insolvency until it is too late to fix. To escape this, you have to treat consumer debt as a radioactive emergency, not a financial tool. If you are carrying a balance on credit cards, it is a flashing red light that your fixed costs are too high for your income stability. The protocol is to aggressively deleverage. You need to strip your monthly obligations down to the studs. This might mean selling the car with the $600 payment and driving a beater. It might mean canceling subscriptions. It means clearing the decks so that your must-have monthly number drops. The lower your fixed burn rate, the more resilient you are to shocks. You want to build a life that can survive on 60% of your household income. That gives you a 40% margin of safety. That is the only way to replicate the stability of the past in the economy of the present. I want you to visualize this final comparison. Imagine 2 families. Family A lives in the 1950s style. 1 income, low costs, big margin. If a storm hits, they have a shelter. Family B is the modern dual income family. 2 incomes, massive costs, 0 margin. They are living in a mansion made of cards. If the wind blows, it collapses. The goal isn't to force women back into the kitchen or to return to the 1950s. The goal is to acknowledge that 2 incomes are a powerful weapon, but only if you don't spend them both. If you use the second income to build wealth, buy assets, and create a fortress of savings, you win. If you use it to bid up the price of your neighbor's house and lease luxury cars, you lose. The 2 income trap is not inevitable. It is a choice. It is a choice to prioritize status over stability. It is a choice to optimize for the best case scenario rather than preparing for the worst case one. You have the power to opt out. You can choose the smaller house. You can choose the older car. You can choose to bank that second salary and build a level of freedom that most people only dream of. Don't let the economy dictate your risk profile. 2 incomes should be your rocket fuel, not your life support system. If your budget only works when everything goes perfectly, you are already in trouble. I want to hear from you in the comments. Are you feeling this squeeze? Have you tried to live on 1 income while earning 2? Let me know your strategy, or if you think I'm missing a piece of the puzzle. I read the comments to refine my own thinking, so treat it like a peer review. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit the like button so the algorithm knows that smart people are watching. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.